Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Brewing Knowledge Friday. We have been reading from Kamla Mukundaya's book. So, just before we start today's read, I thought I'd do a recap. So, in chapter 1, Kamla helped us understand how the brain functions. She very simply gave us the anatomy of the brain, and she went ahead and explained how brain adapts to learning. That's where she came into the second chapter, where she talked about how we learn. And we talked about constructivism, how we absorb, how we apply. That was the summary of the second chapter. Now, after having understood how a brain is set up, how it works, what is learning, where it resides, interestingly, now she moves on to the next chapter to tell us what is memory. I think the stories which she narrates, the way she writes, is absolutely fascinating, if I may just say that. How she puts it together, she explains with basic way of life, and that's what I like about Kamala Mukundaya's writing. So, chapter 3, memory. As I type these words onto an otherwise blank page on the computer, I'm struck by the differences between filling a page with text and filling a brain with knowledge. Listing these differences helps to underline some of the most important characteristics of human memory and learning. The text I enter will remain in this exact form, potentially forever. Human memory, on the other hand, is extremely gist and मीनिंग ओरिएंटेड. जिस्ट का मतलब होता है उसका पूरा निचोड़ के अर्थ रखना, gist, and meaning oriented. Nothing is stored or recalled in verbatim form unless that were the intention, as we memorize a poem. The page I type on is blank, and new sentences, when typed, do not transform old sentences, thankfully. Human memory, on the other hand, works by incorporating new information into organized existing information. And the new information transforms the old. Thus, if I read something about birds of South India, it changes my existing knowledge base about those birds. Nothing is literal, nothing remains unchanged. The file I type in is stored in a folder, within another folder, within another, and so on. To get to a file, you have to open a specific chain of folders, and the chain is fixed. Within the file, the information is stored in a linear fashion, one sentence following the other. Human memory, on the other hand, is organized in exquisitely complicated and subtle ways. In fact, depending on the context, different memories appear to be connected, and therefore, to elicit each other, I can retrieve a particular memory through multiple paths. So, simple thing, when you type and you store information, it's in linear manner, sequential. So let us say we go into the Google Drive, we will go open the drive, file, subfolder, folder, subfolder, and then get to the file. So there is a step by step, you're climbing a step. But as far as brain is concerned, it doesn't have this kind of filing system. And there are multiple ways it stores, and there are many paths. To reach a particular knowledge base, some hint may work, some may not work. So that's the difference. Now let's try and understand how memory works. Sometimes we teachers and the school system we are a part of make demands on our students that are incompatible with these properties of memory. When we use memory inappropriately, we are ignoring its vast powers, its infinite capacities. Psychologists have worked hard on the question of exactly how memory works. And though they still have not arrived at a complete description, they have discovered many interesting things about it. The three important points made above refer to three closely related areas of active research: content, encoding or learning, and organization. So there is content, there is learning, and how it's organized. All three are connected with what is called long-term memory. And we begin the chapter with a description of this. So long-term memory is stored in a very complex way and it's limitless. So if you were to look at the brain, it's like a well. It just has, you can never get to the bottom of the brain as far as memory is concerned. We will first talk about contents of long-term memory, and then we'll go on and talk of other forms of memory. At this point, let me say hello to Jugjeev sir. So Jugjeev sir, just a recap. This Kamla Mukundaya book is very fascinating. First chapter was on brain, how the brain is organized, how there are schemas in the brain, how the brain communicates, how the brain functions. Like the car engine, she explained how the car engine, the battery inside, she explained it very beautifully, that under the bonnet is very complex. Then second chapter, we understood what is learning. Thought that was very interesting when she talked of constructivism. To me, that was very interesting. And today is even more fascinating how memory happens, how memory is stored, how brain stores so much information. And every session we talk about brain exploding and knowledge being kept outside, which you can retrieve. But in brain, the long-term memory is limitless. So if you have a 85, 90-year-old, the person will tell you stories of 80 years back, 20 years back. After all, it's stored somewhere in memory. That's the beauty of it. Now, how do you recall it from there? How it functions? अभी शो बाकी है, अब आगे चलते हैं. The contents of long-term memory. The long-term memory system is of seemingly limitless capacity, as I was mentioning the well. As the name suggests, its contents endure for years, an entire lifetime. But these memories are never literally copies of what we have experienced. The difference between a literal recording and our long term memory comes from two sources. We don't just experience things, we interpret everything we experience. So that no two people experience exactly in exactly the same way. That's the beauty. On top of that, we don't remember every detail of any experience. There are many gaps in our memory which we subsequently fill in with intelligent guesswork. In short, we never remember external events, only our own mental processing of them. The end result is memories that are meaningful to us, even though they are not accurate copies of our experience. I do not see this property of long term memory as a defect. It actually helps us to be efficient and effective in daily life. Recording the gist of the experience can lead to a deeper understanding, better generalizations to other situations and experiences, and is less of a load on the memory system. Of course, it doesn't help students deal with school settings where a lot of rote memorization is demanded. There are two kinds of long term memories: those you can talk about, explicit or declarative, an interesting word, declarative, and those that can only be expressed through actions and behaviors, implicit or procedural. So we are talking of explicit and implicit. The conceptual procedural distinction made in two chapters is that same as the implicit, explicit, implicit, and declarative procedural. So we have done this in chapter 2 when we talked about learning. So where there was implicit and there was explicit. This is a very interesting chapter after that. So I'm tempted to here share. If you look at a chapter, you use a highlighter sometimes. And today on the websites, whatever you highlight in Amazon's Kindle goes on to Goodreads if you give it permission. And these highlight or the gist जो मूल तत्व है वो मेमोरी में जगह जगह पे फिल होके पड़ा रहता है और जब आप उसके बारे में सोचते हैं उसके आसपास आप एक कहानी बना लेते हैं. एक छोटा सा इंसिडेंट होता है हमारी लाइफ में जो होता बहुत डिटेल में है, उसका आंखों देखा हाल अब हर एक इंसिडेंट का रखेंगे तो मे बी ब्रेन की कैपेसिटी खत्म हो जाएगी। तो ब्रेन जो नेसेसरी बाइट है, जो नेसेसरी इंफॉर्मेशन है, बाइट बाय बाइट उसको स्टोर कर लेता है और वो आपकी मेमोरी में रह जाती है। उसके बाद जब आपके पास हाइलाइट्स या हेडिंग्स होते हैं, बाकी आप जब नरेट करते हैं, आप स्टोरी सुना देते हैं, सवाल जवाब लिख लिख पाते हैं। कई बार हम क्या करते हैं, एग्जाम के लिए तैयार करते हैं, हम सिर्फ पॉइंट्स नोट कर लेते हैं। मनीषा मैम बहुत अच्छा एक्रोनिम बना देती हैं और वैसे याद करके हम चले जाते हैं। एक्रोनिम क्या होता है? कुछ वर्ड्स के पहले अक्षर के पहले अल्फाबेट हम ले लेते हैं और उनका एक लिस्ट बना लेते हैं या एक वर्ड कॉइन कर लेते हैं। आप देखते हैं 99% जो हमारी स्कीम्स या जो गवर्नमेंट के जो प्रोसीजर होते हैं वो उसका संपर्क बना देंगे। संपर्क का मतलब कुछ और होगा। ऐसे ही हमारे यहाँ बहुत सारे एग्जाम्पल्स हैं जो हम यू भीम इटसेल्फ इज एन एग्जाम्पल, द यूपीआई यू यूज इट्स एन एक्रोनिम। तो जैसे एक्रोनिम बन के पाक हो जाता है जिससे हमारे लिए याद करना इजी होता है, मेमोरी में भी ऐसे जिस्ट पाक हो जाते हैं। लेट्स गो अहेड। So you have memories. You have memories which are declarative, explicit, and procedure implicit. So what are implicit memories? Like skills, habits, disposition. Sorry, what are procedural or implicit? ये आप देखते हैं, you automatically do them. You imbibe those skills. They become a habit of yours. और explicit में दो होती हैं. Explicit are two, semantic and episodic. Semantic का मतलब है facts, concepts, theories which you learn, and episodic, personal and autobiographical, which you add. So when you retrieve a byte from your memory, let's go downwards. You have a theory which is autobiographical and it's become part of your life. Add that up and you will create a memory. In the figure you see, the procedural memory consists of skills, dispositions, and habits. An example would be the ability to read or ride a bicycle. Declarative memories are all facts, concepts, and theories we possess, as well as personal memories of events. An example would be the list of names of the Mughal kings, or the reasons for the partition, or the name of best friend in the first standard. In both, it is both useful and right to distinguish between two types of memories because, in actual fact, they are processed separately in the brain. We know this for certain because of the symptoms of brain damage patient. You remember the case of the man with hippocampal damage from chapter 1? He could no longer make new explicit memories, but he could still make an implicit memories. Although he never remembered the doctor who met him every day and would always greet her as if they were meeting for the first time, he did get progressively better at a particular mirror drawing task on which he was made to practice daily. Of course, he never remembered having practiced that task, but his performance improved nevertheless. Declarative memories themselves are of two distinct types. There are those to do with ideas and concepts, which are known as semantic memory, and those to do with events in our own lives, episodic. So, semantic are with concepts, episodic are with lives. Again, we know these two are distinguished in the brain because of the patients with specific brain damage who lose their episodic memories but not their semantic ones. These who am I, where am I, patients do not forget any of their general knowledge or abilities. They simply cannot recall a single personal memory from their lives. For example, one knew the make and year of his car but could not remember having driven it in it even once. So experience is not being recorded, but that point or the word or that concept is recorded. That's the beauty of this example. Most of the teaching we do in school adds to our students' semantic memories. Ideas, facts, and concepts are stuff of school syllabi. At least those are the memories we want them to report and retain. If we ask a student to explain Pythagoras' theorem, we don't want her memories of the day she learned it and what she had eaten for lunch just before the class. We just want her to state the theorem. So, theorem means just the knowledge. Now, if she was to store everything together and you asked us, tell us about the Pythagoras theorem, it was a hot afternoon. We were sitting in the class. My mind was thinking of the lunch which is going to follow. And yes, my ma'am told me about the Pythagoras theorem. When my ma'am was telling me about the Pythagoras theorem, I was looking out of the window. So imagine if you had to store the story like this, it would be tough to recall it. But as the theorem in its totality or as an equation, you can keep it very systematically in your brain as a semantic memory. I said that our teaching adds to semantic memories, but the word add does little justice to the complexity of the process. The student's semantic knowledge base increases along several dimensions. The size or the sheer amount of knowledge keeps increasing as he is exposed to new facts and concepts. The number of interconnections amongst the existing pieces of knowledge goes up, as does the complexity of these interconnections. The consistency among different pieces of knowledge and the level of abstraction of his semantic knowledge increases. Do we keep all these in mind when we teach? That's a question to us teachers. That the minute the brain of the student starts filling up, do we even think that far? It's for you to ponder and think about it. I think our education system certainly takes care of the first of these. We have no hesitation adding more and more bits of knowledge to memory. But as teachers, we may have to make special efforts to maximize the more interesting aspects of semantic memory change. We have to help students connect knowledge, confront them with inconsistencies that they have to resolve, and help them build a more complex and abstract knowledge base. Textbooks alone cannot accomplish this. The teacher's role is irreplaceable. When you think about your students learning in a different ways, you will automatically make adjustments to your teaching style. So I'm going to pause here and talk a little about what we are doing just now. You could have read this book sitting home and you didn't need come here. But the interesting thing is for you to make this reading more complete, for you to be able to absorb, I'm narrating the book and I'm adding something which is irreplaceable. So I'm adding things from my knowledge, from my memory, and from my background. And this is the role of a teacher. So you have to bring in, yes, it could be called experiential learning in a way. You have to experiment when you are reading and adapt to the needs of the students at that time or at that day or that hour. And that's the challenge lies when you're handling this complex system of memories. Now let's look at this. Speaking of size, how much semantic memory does an average adult have? This may sound impossible to answer, but people have tried anyway. Michelin Shi, whom you encountered in chapter on learning, makes a conservative estimate that we each possess at least 1 million pieces of knowledge and memory. 1 million. I don't even know how many zeros million has. It gives without saying specifically, if you have read the first two chapters of this book, that the over a million pieces of knowledge and memory are richly interconnected. The way in which they are connected is a question of organization, which we look at in the next section. How long term memories are organized? The
Yeah.
way information is organized in a storage system will determine how it is retrieved and therefore how useful it is. As teachers, we want the things we teach our students to be available to them in a useful form, to come to their minds when they need it, hopefully beyond the year end examination. When a student has learned how to subtract, the teacher hopes she will subtract under all the following conditions. So now we are looking at ways you can retrieve information. So the questions were put in a very interesting way. It's a logic how you will retrieve the information. First example, 456 minus 345 and you'll get a figure. So you retrieve this information. Other ways, 345 plus n is equal to 456. Yet another way is find the difference between 456 and 345. Mr. J has rupees 456 and his wife has rupees 345. How much more money does J have than his wife? And so on. Each of the above questions is a trigger for the student to retrieve the knowledge of how to subtract from long term memory. When we teach subtraction, along with how, we surely must teach when to use it and to which numbers. Because if the knowledge of when or to which numbers is missing or is stored in a way that cannot be retrieved when needed, the knowledge of how to subtract becomes almost useless. This analysis applies to any learning in any field. When a topic is taught with many connections to things that students already know or is likely to encounter in the world, there are many routes for retrieval of the information, many triggers for easier recall. So you give hints. Even when you create exams these days, they give you certain guidelines as how you can solve a question. So these are ways which will help you retrieve from the vast amount of memory. And this is one reason in the new education policy, we realized that there was such an overload on the memory, so they had to reduce a lot of content. So you could easily accommodate more gist in your brain. So, how are memories organized in the brain? It is not as simple as, say, one big book where everything we experience from beginning to end is written. Some have likened memories to a huge library of thousands of books where everything is stored according to a useful classification system so that information can be pulled out quickly when needed. But even this is too simple a picture. In a library, books may be classified by theme and within this alphabetically by author. So if you want Kipling's Jungle Book, you will go to fiction and look under K. But if you are asked to find the book about Mowgli and you don't have any other information about it, you would literally have to search every book in the library to find it, won't you? That is because library books are not organized by the name of the main characters. So they're beautiful illustration. Do you have the one about Sher Khan? This happens often in a library or in a bookstore where a customer comes and narrates what's inside the book. Ask us how difficult it is to reach there. No amount of Googling or information can so easily help you. You got to put in the right prompts. Yes, today you have information on the tab. But if you look at some time where you did not have this extensive data or knowledge in the cloud, how difficult that would be. Beautiful picture. Look at the hand going from shelf to shelf, trying to find the book. The librarian is helping the child. Human memories, however, seem to be organized in every possible way. If you read Jungle Book, then you will probably answer all these questions equally rapidly. Tell me the name of the popular book by Kipling that's been made into a film. Tell me the name of the story of Mowgli. Tell me the name of the book about Bagheera and so on. It is as though your memories of books are organized in every possible way because we can retrieve information, pull books out of shelves unerringly and rapidly, no matter what kind of questions we are asked. The same goes for our personal memories as well. What was the book you read when you had chicken pox? Can you also get the quick answer Jungle Book? There are currently a few popular explanations of the memory organizations, of which I describe here. One is the semantic network theory. Concepts like chair or rabbit or joy are linked to each other by relations, and these relations can be of several kinds. Some are subset hierarchies, others are cause effect, others are before after. Now you look at the figure, there's furniture, there's chair, there's table, there's bed. Subset hierarchy, bacterial infection causes fever, causes shivering. Cause and effect, that's what is shown here. So you see subset on top. Furniture subset means chair, table, and bed. And cause and effect, you have an infection, you get fever, you get shivering. So that's the cause and effect relationship. Concepts are linked more closely to each other, form a domain. And the examples of domains are varied as having a bath, chemistry, and furniture. to the extent that they overlap. These domains contain many shared concepts like bathtub, soap, and varnish. We'll see in the figure below. The whole mess has been called tangled hierarchies, which I think is a lovely description of memory. So let's look at what memory looks like. We're trying to create a picture of what memory looks like. And it's fascinating how she's trying to construct that picture. So you're having a bath, you need shower, you need bathtub, you need soap, you need bucket, you need mug. Soap is made from chemical products like varnish. Varnish is used in wood. Wood is made to furniture, and furniture gives you table, bed, and chair. In chemical products, you get chemistry, periodic tables, laboratory test tubes. So see how memory is there. Having a bath got linked to a test tube. Having a bath got linked to a chair. How interesting that is. According to another theory, declarative knowledge can be seen as recurring patterns in experience, stored as scripts, plans, maps, or explanation that guide our interpretation of new experiences. These are Piaget's schemas. So, schemas are what we talked of in chapter 1 when we talked about brain and how schemas create a knowledge system for us. Schemas are abstract because they represent the patterns underlying many different experiences. If a schema is activated by something in the environment, for example, my Indian education schema is activated by the mention of NCERT. The entire schema is interpreted as a package. The new experience is often then interpreted in the context of this schema. Whichever theory we subscribe to, it is clear that our teaching must encourage connections and relationships of different kinds. If memory naturally tends to be organized, let's use the property to the student's advantage. Where appropriate, we should. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a shot of this. This is a summary of what we come here, and I'm going to park it with you because it will help you shape the understanding of memory and how you can do the cause and effect in the classroom. Whichever theory we subscribe to, it is clear that our teaching must encourage connections and relationships of different kinds. If memory naturally tends to be organized, let's use the property to the student's advantage. Where appropriate, we should first demonstrate hierarchies like taxonomies, highlight correlations among different phenomena, look for cause effect relationships, distinguish central principles from examples, and use analogies. So, as a teacher, when you are trying to explain how memory functions or how your students can learn better, these are your takeaways, these 5 takeaways. Use analogies, distinguish principles from examples, look for cause effect relationships, highlight correlations, demonstrate hierarchies. We will pause here and create a bookmark for today and bring in you people to ask any question you want to. Manisha, bookmark for what date, please?
Today is 8th. Yeah, 15th.
Yeah. Yes, we will meet on 15th August before you ask me that question. So we had the bookmark. Now we come back to the session. Before I open the next book, a quick minute. Anything that triggers your mind, आप कुछ इंटरेस्टिंग चीज सोच पा रहे हैं ब्रेन के बारे में, मेमोरी के बारे में, एनीथिंग यू वांट टू आस्क?
Well, from my memory, I managed to retrieve that we've come across Piaget earlier in productive failure.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've now connected one session to another session. And in productive failure, Piaget has a phenomenal role and he's done so many experiments. So yeah, absolutely. So that's a perfect example of how you've been able to connect it. Brilliant. Any question from anyone you want to ask? अगर आपको कोई सवाल पूछना है, मैं खुशी से आपको बता सकता हूँ. रीना जी, साक्षी जी, क्योंकि आप हमारे साथ अंग्रेजी की किताब पढ़ रहे हैं, मैं 2 मिनट में बताऊंगा आज हम क्या कर रहे हैं. हमारे ब्रेन में और हमारे दिमाग में जो इंफॉर्मेशन है, जो नॉलेज है, वो छोटे छोटे टुकड़ों में जमा होती है। और आसान चीज है, जब आप बैठ के एक लाइन में पत्थर रख रहे हो तो आप लाइन में चल रहे हैं, पहले पत्थर से शुरू होंगे, आखिर पे पहुंच जाएंगे। वो होता है एक लाइन में चलना, एक ही राह में चलना। बट ब्रेन में क्या है, जैसे कि मकड़ी का जाला होता है, ऐसे बहुत सारी राहें होती हैं। आप एक चीज को ढूंढने के लिए किसी भी रूट से जा सकते हैं। एक शहर में बाईपास होता है, सर्कुलर होता है, रिंग रोड होती है। तो अगर आप शहर देखें आसमान से, तो आप देखेंगे कितनी सड़कें हैं जो आपको एक जगह से दूसरी जगह ले जा सकती हैं। कोई शॉर्टकट से जाएगा, कोई गली से जाएगा। ऐसे ही आपके ब्रेन की जो सोच है, वो हर एक चीज को अलग तरीके से सोचती है और आपको रास्ता देती है उसको ढूंढने का। दिस इज हाउ मेमोरी इज स्टोर्ड। सो द स्टोरेज ऑफ मेमोरी इज लाइक अ जम्बल्ड cobweb, and that's how your brain retrieves it from various directions and various processes. So we are going to go back to the library now. Let's open the second book. Now to come to the story of the day. This is very, very interesting. Jugji, would you like to read the story? Okay. The story today, Manisha, is The Lion, the Wolf, and the Fox. We are reading from the book of Rumi, 105 stories and fables that illumine or illume, the word should be illumine, delight, and actually help us understand things. So, very interesting book. The book, if you can get hold of, is very, very fascinating. It informs us a lot, it delights us, and illuminates us, which means it enlightens us. A lion, a wolf, and a fox had become hunting partners. So एक शेर, एक लोमड़ी, और एक वुल्फ। क्या होता है? बाघ। वुल्फ क्या होता है हिंदी में, कोई बताएगा?
भेड़िया।
भेड़िया, अच्छा। तो एक शेर, एक भेड़िया और एक लोमड़ी चले हैं हंटिंग करने। ये आज की कहानी है। The lion was reluctant to be seen with the lowly fox and wolf, but had yielded to their company because he thought it was his duty as the king of the prairie to allow them to benefit from his grace. Prairies, grasslands. So as lion is the king of the land there, prairies are grasslands. So he says, वो मेरे slaves हैं, मुझे उनके साथ जाना पड़ेगा। वो अपनी ड्यूटी समझ के एक लोमड़ी और एक भेड़िए के साथ चला। Just as stars receive their light from the sun, the lion felt obliged to be magnanimous with respect to weaker and less worthy animals. Their first hunt together in the high country was successful. Under the lion's tutelage, the trio managed to capture a bull, a mountain goat, and a fat rabbit. With the lion's help, the two smaller animals carried their rich hunt from the mountain down to the prairie, their hunger growing by the minute. The wolf and the fox were too frightened to raise the issue of how the prey should be divided, but deep in their hearts they believed that the mighty lion would be fair in giving them their share. In fact, perhaps he would let them have most of the catch, as he was so magnanimous. तो उन्होंने सोचा ये शेर बहुत दिलेर है, हमें सब कुछ खाने देगा, और उठा के लाए बेचारे नीचे ग्रासलैंड में, पहाड़ी के ऊपर जंगल से। राजा जी सैंक्चुरी में कहीं अंदर से हंटिंग करके आए और बाहर लाके आर्थर फूड एकेडमी में बैठ के खाएंगे और सोचेंगे शेर उनको सब कुछ खाने देगा। शेर, the lion for his part could sense that the two companions were thinking. Now lion is sensing, but he decided to remain quiet until an opportune moment arose when he would show them who was the decision maker among them. So चुप बैठा रहा कि टाइम आएगा तो मैं बताऊंगा कि कौन डिसीजन लेता है। अब आगे चलते हैं। अब लायन देखो क्या कहता है। You lowly beasts, Was my precious company not enough for you? Thought the lion to himself. How dare you think that you can influence or predict my decisions? Don't you understand that every thought you have, every action you may take are possible only because of me? अब ये शेर का गुरूर बोल रहा है. While he entertained these thoughts, the lion erupted into laughter, prompting the wolf and the fox into thinking that soon they'd be filling their empty stomachs with their prey. Wolf, called out Lion, be my agent and divide the game. Be absolutely fair in your allocation. Show me that you are made of. He challenged the wolf. My king, the bull must be yours, as it's the largest catch, declared the wolf, thinking he had come to the best conclusion. The mountain goat goes to me, as it is smaller and befits my size. The rabbit suffices the fox. हमारे जो हिंदी पढ़ने वाले हैं, आपको ये कहानी यहाँ तक समझ आई? हाँ या ना? अनम्यूट करके बता दें. हंटिंग करके आए हैं, शेर है, भेड़िया है और लोमड़ी है, और जो वो मार के लाए हैं अब वो सोच रहे हैं कौन क्या खाएगा. सबसे बड़ी चीज वो मार के लाए हैं एक बुल, और फिर लाए हैं एक गोट, और तीसरा लाए हैं एक खरगोश. अब वो डिवाइड करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. You dare speak of yourself in my presence, snapped the lion, fancying that you even exist while in the company of an unrivaled majestic king is blasphemy. Come forward quickly, he ordered. Blasphemy का मतलब बहुत बड़ा ढकोसला, झूठ, गलत बोलना. As soon as the wolf took his first step, the lion lifted his monstrous paws and ripped his head off and shredded his body, leaving just the shell. This low-born creature was entirely ruled by his ego. No room for him in my kingdom, announced the lion nobly. Once he was finished with the wolf, the lion turned to the fox. Fox, it's your turn to divide the loot. Hurrying up, as I am feeling peckish. So let us see what the fox said. The fox bowed respectfully, swallowing his fear. Your Honor, this fat bull is your delightful breakfast, he said, nervous discomfort. The mountain goat will be appropriate for your lunch, and the rabbit will suffice for your delectable supper. लोमड़ी चालाक होती है ना, देखो. Where did you learn how to divide the loot in this manner? Asked the surprised Lion King. From watching the desecrated body of the wolf, Your Honor. You are a smart fox, the lion admitted. You have been absorbed into your love for me, and you have stopped regarding yourself as separate from the object of my love. Now you can only see me while you no longer exist, and that's why I let you have all the three catches. Take them and be gone. I'll never hurt you. You may not only have the prey, but I, too, am yours now. One who learns a lesson from watching his friends' mistakes is indeed the wisest one. The fox couldn't believe his luck, silently giving thanks to God that the lion had first chosen the wolf to divide the loot. Otherwise, it would have been his dead corpse sprawled over the prairie. कोई सवाल आया मन में? चालाक लोमड़ी शेर से भी जीत गई, देखो. और जो खतरनाक भेड़िया था उसको लायन ने खत्म कर दिया. कोई कुछ कहना चाहेगा? I've added the bookmark for today. An interesting story. I'm stopping share. जुगीव सर, आप क्या हैं, भेड़िया हैं?
I think it's a modern story, right? So It's it's not how what we would have thought of. That's not how it ran, right? So it's it's a modern story. So yeah, I think Lion, in that sense, got it right. He was happy with the fox because he figured it out. Yeah. So that makes it a modern story. So we have to be basically observing and learning and moving on. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the role, that's what a teacher has to profess, and that's what teacher has to adapt the children to become.
Yeah.
सो
Yeah.
आपको ये मेन इसका जो मैसेज टीचर के लिए यही है कि इसमें देखिए, एक लायन था, एक वुल्फ था और एक फॉक्स था। जमाने से हम कहते आ रहे हैं स्लाई फॉक्स, कोई मकसद होता है कि फ्लॉक्स फॉक्स बड़ा चतुर होता है और इसी करके वो बच के निकल जाता है, और जो वुल्फ होता है वो फंस जाता है। इस केस में भी लायन ने वुल्फ को खत्म किया और फॉक्स निकल गया। तो इसलिए हमको आज की तारीख में फॉक्स की तरह अडेप्ट करना बहुत जरूरी है, ताकि हम कठिन से कठिन सिचुएशन से निकल सके। और ये जो रोल है, आज मैं कहीं पढ़ रहा था दिन में, बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग रोल था और इस चैप्टर में भी आया था, व्हाई इज टीचर इररिप्लेसेबल? Because you have two ways of thinking. One was the linear method, which is cause and effect. Now, if you do coding, logic, AI, it will go by the cause and effect method. But if you use the teacher in thought and use a cobweb in your head, एक मकड़ी का जाला, आप हर एक रास्ते का बाईपास निकाल सकते हैं और वो सोच से निकलता है। तो इसलिए आपको अपनी सोच को बढ़ाना है, और सोच को बढ़ाने का केवल एक ही तरीका है कि हम मेमोरी में छोटे छोटे पीसेस जो होते हैं जिगसॉ को जोड़ के एक बड़ी पिक्चर बना सकें। इस पे समय का अभाव होने के कारण अब हम आगे नहीं जाएंगे। किसी को कुछ कहना है तो हम यहाँ आपके लिए हाजिर हैं। सुमन, नवीन, रघुबीर, साक्षी, एनीथिंग यू वांट टू से? रीना जी, आप तुम्हें बस में घूम रही लगती थी, फिर भी आपने अटेंड किया, थैंक यू। मनीषा, यू वांट टू ऐड समथिंग? यू वांट टू बी द फॉक्स?
No, sir.
Maybe you want to be the
You know,
fox and add something.
based on this story, Fox won. Yeah. So yeah, I would imagine so. But the point you were making, have to increase your brain functioning. So let me bring in the third book, and that's what Carl tells Shaska in the book, that if you want to increase your capabilities, read is what he suggests to her.
Absolutely. And Jugjeev, if you look at what we are saying for reading, I think that is what the coder also does. If you see how software is designed, you create a wireframe, Jugjeev. It brings a wireframe to my mind instantly.
Yeah.
How the
Yeah.
wireframe works, you can make a route from anything to anywhere through the wireframe. And that's why sometimes we say brain is wired. And that is fascinating. So please wire your brain, rewire your brain, adapt. And that's the whole story. That's why we are here. We are asking you to think. Jugjeev sir said reading. We are asking you to reflect. And a corollary to reading is reflection. When you read, you will reflect. इसी के साथ आपका और हमारा रिश्ता बन जाएगा. We will form relationships. So we are telling you the core of our entire learning model: reading, reflection, relationships. May I suggest, please reflect in the WhatsApp chat itself, where we have marked today's highlights. Just start reflecting. It is important now. We have been reading for a few Fridays. I'm not asking you to do an assignment. If you feel the fox was right, write about it. If you feel the lion was right, write about it. Don't even bother yourself to think about Kamla's way of memories and how do you store. So whatever you took away from your session today, just comment on it. That's reflection. It's as easy as that. On that note, thank you, Jugjeev sir. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, teachers, for attending. Naveen, Suman, Raghubir, JDS का झंडा ऊंचा रहे और आप लोग पढ़ते रहें. हमारी सब शुभकामनाएं आप सबको और आपके स्कूल को, आपके बच्चों को, जो आपके साथ पढ़ते रहें और आगे बढ़ते रहें. थैंक यू. जुगजीत सर जय हिंद भी बोलेंगे आज.
Why not, Jai Hind?
जय हिंद भी सीख गए हम. थैंक यू सो मच. बाय बाय.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.